What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Guys, had a special request from the Discord here with the origin of each European country name. This is definitely going to be interesting to learn the origin of each name. As we know, what we see now, it wasn't the name of it back then type of thing. Some of them may have been, but that's what we're here for, learning purposes. But y'all hit that subscribe button and let's check out the origin of these countries.
Sometimes people shorten United States of America to just America. But do you know why it's called America? It comes from a navigator and explorer named Amerigo Vespucci. His writings about the journey to the New World were so popular back in Europe that his name became closely associated with the new continent. This is surprising as Vespucci's stories were written a few years after Columbus thought he landed in Asia. Still, when Americans are taught that Columbus discovered the New World, it's not exactly true. It's unlikely, but there's a theory that an Irish monk named Saint Brendan got there in the 6th century, and that it's certain that Leif Erikson and his band of merry Vikings landed there in the 10th century. There's also the theory that a Muslim Chinese eunuch sailor from the Ming Dynasty arrived there 71 years before Columbus. Country names and their origins are really interesting.
So everybody that made it for Columbus at this point, just about.
As you'll see today when we talk about Europe, some of these names are certainly surprising and will no doubt leave you scratching your head. Albania. Many civilizations have been in Albania throughout history, including the Greeks and Romans, but the name of the country actually comes from the Albanoi, which was an Illyrian tribe that dated back to the 2nd century BC. Interestingly, their language, Shikip or Shikaip, is thought to have come from the meaning to speak intelligibly. Andorra. Historians aren't too sure where the country name comes from, but one hypothesis that seems about right is it relates to the Arabic phrase Aldura, which means forest. Known for its natural beauty, when the Moors were in Andorra, they named it the place of vast forests. It might have also originated from a word in the local Navarro-Aragonese language. The word Anduril means land of scrubland or brushes. We love this next one. Armenia. The name relates to a guy named Haik, which relates to the country name Hayastan, a nation which he founded in the region where Armenia is today. The story goes that in 2492 BC, Haik defeated a Babylonian king named Bel, and that's when he made his own nation. It goes without saying that this might not have actually happened, but as a wise man once said, if you have to choose between truth and legend, print the legend. His dynasty continued to hold power in the region, and his great-great-grandson, a man named Arminak, would become the reason why the country got its name. The name Armenia is derived from this once great leader's dynasty, if you believe the legends, that is. Now for the place where Adolf Hitler was born, Austria. Austria is often high on the best standards of living indexes, coming in at 7th on one particular index for 2022.
I just thought about why you had to say, oh, this is where Hitler was born, everybody.
Still, we bet all those highly educated
maybe that's
folks
how
who
people
live
remember.
there don't know where the country name comes from. It originates from the old High German word Ostarici, which means Eastern land. That likely originated from the Latin words Marcia Orientalis, which means Eastern borderland. This next one is cool. Azerbaijan. Although this country has been embroiled with conflict recently over the contested region of Nagorno-Karabakh, you shouldn't let that fool you. Azerbaijan is a beautiful country and has an interesting history to match. It seems the name of Azerbaijan originates from a Persian guy named Atropates. He served under Darius III and later Alexander the Great. His name comes from the Greek word atropatan, which means protected by fire. We sure you heard about this next place, Belarus. The name for this country likely comes from Belaya Rus, the White Rus. The Ruses originally came from Scandinavia, but they settled in large parts of Russia and nearby countries. There were the Black Rus and the White Rus, two political entities which controlled large parts of Eastern Europe during the days of the Rus migration.
That's very
These days
interesting.
you might order a drink, either a White Russian or a Black Russian, and there's history in that drink. This one's interesting too. Belgium.
That is wild. I guess there's been black and white beef since beginning of the time that we can remember.
Belgium's 11.5 million people sit between the Netherlands, Germany, Luxembourg, and France. Many of those folks might also be polyglots, speaking Flemish, French, German, and possibly English. Their country name comes from Belgica. This was the Roman name for the place where the hard-hitting tribes of the northern part of Gaul gave Julius Caesar a run for his money. Bosnia and Herzegovina. You might remember that until about 30 years ago, there was a place called Yugoslavia in Central and Southeast Europe. It contained the 6 republics of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia.
Oh,
There
that's
are
all
about
that
3.5
together?
million people living in Bosnia and Herzegovina today. It's called that because of the river of Bosna, but
Oh.
the Herzegovina part is a little more interesting.
Oh, man, the way-
It comes from
picture.
the word Hersek, an old word meaning duke.
Hersek?
It seems that a guy named Stjepan Vukcik claimed this area for himself in the 1400s and named it the property of the duke. Bulgaria. This country name is easy enough.
I still find it weird. I don't think I find it weird, but it's just crazy how back then when they discovered new land, they just started claiming it. You know, I don't know who they were claiming it to, but I guess they were making their mark, letting them know this is ours. And it's like they're talking to their own people. Hey, this is our land now. We gotta do everything to protect it. Crazy time back then,
To
man.
figure out, it's said to be related to the Bulgars. These were a
Bulgars.
tribe of people with Turkic roots that founded the first Bulgarian Empire. The word Bulgar relates to rebels, disturbers, and generally folks that like to shake things up. Croatia. This name comes from the word
Croatia.
Croat, who were a Slavic people with a
Croat?
rich history that we won't go into because it would take us
Oh,
all
that
week.
look nice.
Cyprus. Cyprus is an island nation in the
Cyprus.
eastern Mediterranean Sea, so every July and August you can expect there to be great hordes of pink-skinned Brits getting a bit of that thing that's often strange to them,
pink skin.
sunshine. Back in the ancient times, the Greeks called it a number of things, including a golden leaf thrown into the sea and a place of wild weather and volcanoes. Their name for it was Kypros, which seems to be
Kypros.
related to all the precious copper there. Czech Republic. This country's name may come from a Slavic tribe called the Sesi, and it might also originate from the word Seta, which were a band of warriors. As you know, it used to be part of Czechoslovakia, and before that it was called Bohemia. And that word comes from the Latin Boiohemum, meaning Gallic tribe.
Boiohemum?
It gets more complicated though. The word
That is
Czech
sounding
is also
complicated.
related to 3 Slavic warrior brothers named Lech, Czech, and Rus, who settled various areas for themselves. Denmark. The name Denmark
Not
could have come
Denmark.
from the legendary King Dan. It might also
King
come
Dan.
from the Latin and Greek name Dania. It also could have come from words meaning flat lands, but it might also have emerged from very old
The
texts
Dani people.
in which historians talked about the Dani people.
Dani
Estonia.
people. I said
Estonia
Dani.
is so tricky that no one knows the answer. It's likely the word comes from isti, which might have come from the word esti. This is what the
Isti,
Roman
Asti.
historian Tacitus called a bunch of Eastern tribal folks when he was writing in the history text called Germania. Finland. This
Not
should
the-
be easy. It's the land of the Finns. But
Lands of the Finns, lands of the Sonas.
who are Finns? This is especially confusing when you hear that the
Why
early
is he
Finnish
spanking
language
him with
didn't
a
even
leaf?
have an F
A
sound.
flower.
Some historians say the word Finn
Or a
comes
tree.
from
Why is he spanking him with a mini tree right there? What does that
the early
mean?
Finnish language didn't even have an F sound. Some historians say the word Finn comes from an Old English word Finna, but it's
Finna.
more likely that it comes from the Swedish words Finlonti and Finlandia, which just
Finlonti.
designated the area where Finland is. But then the Finns might say their country is Suomi, the name given to the northern regions of Finland. That's a word that may come from the word
Fish
Suoma,
skins,
which means swampland.
swamplands.
If this isn't confusing enough, the word might be related to fish skins, which were apparently something people wore on their
Fish
bodies.
skins.
France. This is easy. It
How many fish do you have to kill to wear the skin? Fish are not that big.
comes from the Franks, a Germanic tribe, and that comes from the Old
Franks.
German word Franka, which can mean both
Oh,
fierce
the
and
Eiffel
brave.
Tower.
Georgia. Joseph Stalin's country
Georgia.
of birth likely gets its name from the Persian word
Georgia.
Guruj. The Guruj people came head-to-head with the Western European Crusaders, and
Oh.
unsurprisingly, the Europeans changed the name of the region. They called it Georgia, and then lied and said it was related to St. George. But there's another theory that it
That's what I would
originated in
think. St.
ancient
George,
Greek texts,
Georgia.
when the writers were referencing to tillers of the land, the Georgi. It might have also come from another Persian word, land of the wolves. Now for Europe's biggest country
Ain't that
in terms
the
of
America,
economy,
Georgia right
Germany.
there?
Germany
Son.
got its name from the Romans and
German.
Julius Caesar, who named this place at the east of the Rhine Germania.
Germania.
Greece. The ancient Greeks
That's
didn't call
interesting.
themselves Greeks. They lived in city-states, although they might have called themselves Hellenes. In Greek
Hellenes.
mythology, the Hellenes came from Helen, the son of Deucalion and Pyrrha. The Romans started calling them Greeks when they referred to these people as Graeci.
I see. That's where I thought the Greeks came from. Greece, Greeks. That's
Hungary.
what I was
The
thinking.
name comes from on ogre.
Hungary.
This meant 10 arrows, which could have been related to the 10 tribes that belonged to the
Hungary, they
Magyar
showing
Confederation.
food.
The Magyars were tribes that didn't much like staying near the Ural Mountains, so they settled in other places, including what we now call Hungary. You'll dig this next one, Iceland. There are a
Not
lot of names for
Iceland.
Iceland that all relate
The
back
land
to
of
old
ice.
poems. There's a story that in the 9th century a Viking looked at the place and decided to call it Snaeland, the land of snow. There's another
Snaeland.
tale that said the reason locals back then named it Iceland and the other place Greenland was so that raiders would think there was nothing worth raiding in Iceland. Yet another tale says a Norwegian guy named Hafna Floki Vigoresnan tried to live in Iceland, but things didn't exactly turn out great. All his
Dang.
livestock died during the first winter. He then got up and left, looking back over his shoulder and thinking, God, it's just full of ice. He then named it Iceland.
That's crazy.
Ireland. Maybe the name Ireland comes
What interesting. I want to know why that's Iceland. And if you go to Antarctica, I mean, I guess I need to know about Antarctica, because Antarctica seemed like that would be like a Schnallen, Iceland type place, you know. But I guess Antarctica will work.
comes from the
Antarctica.
land of angry people. Get it? Ire means a form of anger. It has nothing to do with the word ire, though. The most likely explanation is it comes
Ain't
from
that what the pirates were
the
saying?
word
Arr.
ira, which in turn comes from the word iru. This is a really old word that relates to the
Iru.
matron goddess of Ireland. She was Iru. The ancient Greeks called Ireland Lerna, and the Romans called it Hibernia, Italy.
Hibernia.
Back in the day, there wasn't such a thing as Italy, but there
Oh.
were tribes in the area called Sicels. The Greeks called these folks Italoi, and that's likely where we get the name Italy.
Italoids, I've never
As you
heard
know,
that.
a few
That's-
countries end with the suffix stan. What's that all about? The answer is it comes from the Persian and Urdu word that means place of. So Kazakhstan is the place
Kazakh.
of the Kazakhs. But who were the Kazakhs? The word likely comes from Kaz, which means to wander. This area, after all, was full of nomadic people. Other meanings of the word might refer to the riders of the steppe. Either way, that's pretty cool. Kosovo. This one is short and sweet, or at least there doesn't seem to be many
Kosovo.
different theories out there. The name comes from the
field of
Serbian
the
word that
blackbirds.
means field of the blackbirds. Latvia. This country's name
Latvia.
comes from a group of tribal people
Latvia.
called the Latgalians. They later joined
Latgalian.
up with other tribal folks, and together they made up the Latvians. Liechtenstein. If you take this word apart, it can mean
Liechtenstein.
bright and stone. That was the name of a castle, and the castle became the name of a ruling dynasty, and that's how we get the country of Liechtenstein.
So they got this small country named off of the name of I'm guessing a bright and stone castle. That's interesting. That's
Castle,
very
and
interesting.
the castle became the name of a ruling
Wait, the name of
dynasty,
whole
and
country.
that's how we get the country of Liechtenstein. Lithuania. Scholars might find themselves in a punch-up over the origin of this country's name. There's no consensus, but it might come from a small river called the Litava. There are other
Litava.
theories, such as it coming out of the word for rain. Luxembourg. This one's a bit easier.
Luxembourg.
Back in 963, a guy named Siegfried Count the Ardennes swapped his land for a Roman castle that was located on the Alzette River.
Little
The castle
fortress.
was called Lucilienburghhoek, meaning little fortress. It was this castle
Oh,
that
wow.
became the origin of the name Luxembourg.
Oh,
This
man,
next
wow.
one
Yeah,
is
yeah.
rather funny. Macedonia. Macedonia is
Macedonia.
thought to have come from the Greek word makednos, which can mean tall.
Makedos?
It has the same root as the
Makednos?
Greek word makros, which can
Macaroni.
mean high or long. So in short, when the Greeks referred to Macedonia, they might have been talking about highlanders or a place where tall folks lived. This next one is also quite amusing. Moldova. Moldova simply takes its name
Moldova.
from the Moldova River. According to legend, in the 14th century, a guy named Prince Drago was
Wow.
hunting out there. Things did not go
Prince
as
Drago,
planned.
like
His
Dracula?
dog named Molda drowned in the river. After that, the prince named the river after his much-loved pooch. So Moldova takes its name from a rather daft dog.
Molda.
Sorry, Moldovans. Monaco, this land of millionaires.
That's very. I mean, I guess that's how people are nowadays too. You name stuff after something like that, but a whole country
A rather
after a
daft
dog that died. That's crazy.
Sorry, Moldovans. Monaco, this land of
Monaco.
millionaires and tax evaders, gets its name from the Greek word monikos, which means single, mono, and
Single
house,
house?
kos. Legend has it that Hercules stopped off there, and because of that, one single temple was built. Montenegro. We guess you can already figure out what this
Montenegro.
next country was named after. By
Black
breaking down the
Mountains,
two words in
Mountain
its
Black.
name, we get Black Mountain. The reason the country was called this was down to Mount Lovchen looking black when it was densely covered in trees. Netherlands. In Old English,
the
Holland
Netherlands.
meant woodland, and that's how the
Holland,
folks of the western
woodland.
region of the Netherlands were referred to. After a while, people from all around this region were said to have come from
Dutch.
Holland. It's even more confusing when you think of the people, the Dutch people. The word Dutch actually comes from the Old English words thiod and theod. The words Netherlands also comes from the word for lowland areas, literally the lowlands. The region has a complicated history, but don't worry about using either Netherlands or Holland. They pretty much mean the same thing, even if they aren't exactly the same. We like this next one too. Norway. The word Norway means pretty much one thing. That is the way north, or the northern way. It comes from the Old English word Northway. It's self-explanatory given that Norway is indeed the way north. Poland. Once upon a time, there was a Slavic tribe named the Polans. These people got to work building what became the state of Poland. But then, you also have the Polish word for Poland, which is Polska. That literally means the land of fields. Also, you might know the legend of those three butt-kicking brothers, Czech, Lech, and Rush. Lech was the brother that built Lechia, which is another ancient name for Poland. This next one is kind of crazy. Portugal. Portugal comes from the Roman Celtic name Portus Cale, meaning port of Kale. Who is Kale? Good question. She was a deity in Celtic mythology, sometimes referred to as a divine hag. Hey, don't shoot the messenger. Hags were a big deal in Celtic mythology, so Portugal was named after an old hag. In the 7th century, Portus Cale started being called Portugal. Romania. You won't be surprised to hear that Romania takes its name from the Romans. Some Romans went there back in the day and settled the region, mixing in with the local Dacians, a tribe which Rome fought to get this region under its control. One historian explained, those Romans who remained in Dacia mixed their Roman language with the language of the Sarmatians, of the Slavs, and that of the Dacians. Russia. You already know the story of the Rus. Russia was the land of the Rus. These folks were Norse merchants that traveled across the Baltic Sea and ended up settling in the region near Moscow. San Marino. We imagine some of you haven't even heard of San Marino, the tiny and beautiful country in southern Europe.
I've only heard a little bit about San Marino. I haven't dived deep into it, but definitely gonna I do want to learn a little bit more about
that always gets its butt kicked when it plays soccer with other nations. As the story goes, a guy named St. Marinus escaped to this area thinking the Roman emperor was going to nail him up by his wrists. The saint ran for his life, built a church, kept speaking about God and Jesus, and hey presto, in time we got San Marino. Serbia.
Wow.
Serbia gets its name from the Serbs, like the Croats. The Serbs are a Slavic people. They have lots in common, just as the New York Times wrote in an article saying historians contend that the Serbs and Croats were related tribes of Persian origin who migrated as warriors to the Balkan Peninsula, where they were assimilated by South Slavs already there by the 5th century. So Serbia was just the land of the Serbs.
Land of the Serbs.
Slovakia is the land of the Slovaks. But the word Slovak isn't that different from the word Slovenes, Slavonians,
Wait a
and
minute. Luka Doncic's from Slovenia. That's Slovakia. I'm tripping.
Some Slavic tribes settled in what is present-day Slovakia sometime in the 5th century. Many centuries after,
I used to think that was all the one same place, to be honest.
Along with Ukraine and the Czech Republic, but now it's its own place. Slovenia. So
there
as
it
you
is,
can
Luka.
guess, Slovenia also relates to Slavic people. Slovenia and Slovakia don't border each other, and of course they have their own unique traditions, but they are similar in many ways too. Just like the Welsh and the Scottish share lots of similarities. A Slav might be a Slav, but all Slavs are unique, and all Slavic countries are home to different kinds of Slav culture. Spain. The Romans called Spain Hispania. The Greeks talked about some folks who lived in the Iberian Peninsula and had their own language. There's a theory that the word for Spain might have come from the lands where metals are forged. It might have also come from the Greek word Hespernia, which means western land.
And I bet they still have that church that they haven't finished building even back then.
Sweden. Sweden was once occupied by the feared Svea tribe. It was the land of the Svea. And Svea, like many of the tribes of Scandinavia, took off in boats and caused mayhem during raids. As you know, these guys we call the Vikings, thus popularizing their tribe's name.
See, that's why I expected them to talk about the Vikings and stuff when they, got to Norway and Denmark too.
Giving us the name of Sweden. Switzerland. The land of the Swiss is Switzerland, but who are the Swiss? It comes from the word Schwyz, which was the name of a province in this area. In 1291, 3 provinces called cantons, which included Schwyz, Uri, and Unterwalden, joined together. They became the Ewigerbund, the Eternal League. This became Switzerland. Turkey. This region of the world wasn't the country of Turkey until 1923. The word Turkey comes from the Turkic people, even though Turkey or areas of Turkey have been called all kinds of things over the centuries. This next one,
and I bet people think they have Turkey there,
always seems to confuse Americans. United Kingdom. The Romans called this
What
place
that confused?
Britannia,
Britannia,
which at the time of
Britain?
their arrival was full of tribal groups including the Celts. In the 10th century, England was formed when a bunch of West Saxon kings wanted to consolidate power. The Vikings and the Saxons had been having numerous bloody scraps for ages by then. Under the laws in Wales Act of 1535 and 1542, England annexed Wales, and then in 1707 the Scots got on board, and the Kingdom of Great Britain became a thing. Northern Ireland is now also part of the United Kingdom. These countries all are still their own nations, even if they do form the country of the United Kingdom.
I never
In
understood.
geographic terms, all of Ireland is part of the British Isles, but this is just an area, nothing to do with politics. There are tons of little islands in the British Isles, England, Scotland, and Wales, and their little
I did
islands
that
are part
video
of
before.
Great Britain, but none of Ireland
I did that video before, but it still confused me. I kind of understood it, I kind of didn't.
is. That means the UK and Great Britain are not exactly the same, but they're close. In terms of words, the Greeks and Romans might call England Albion, which comes from Latin and
Albion?
refers to the White Land. When someone sailed over to England, they were often met by the White Cliffs of Dover. The Romans called Scotland Caledonia after the Caledoni tribe. They also called Wales Cambria. The word England comes from the land of Angles, which comes
Angles?
from the Old English word Anglaland. Before that, the Romans might refer to it as Angli.
Look at they
Vatican
fighting.
City. The word Vatican
Okay, I
comes
was
from
like,
an Etruscan
we-
settlement that went by the name Vatica or Vaticum. The Etruscan
See, I don't know too much about Vatican City, but it's one of those micronations, I believe.
civilization goes back about to 900 BC. They had their own things going on, but when Rome became super powerful, the Etruscans just became a part of Roman society. The
Vaticum.
Romans used the word Ager Vaticanus, which means Vatican territory, and that's how Vatican City got its name. Now you need to watch European Stereotypes.
Oh, okay. I already seen European stereotypes though, but that's interesting. That's interesting, just how everything came about. Interesting stories. I mean, y'all can be the judge of that. Let me know, fact or cap type thing. But other than that, I'll say not bad. Interesting how some names came about, but that's just how life was back then. Back then, I feel like, you went to a place, unfamiliar place, be like, this is ours, and if somebody wanted it, they had to fight you for it, Of course, we don't have to do that these days, but just how everything came about, everything in life has meaning. So as long as it have meaning and we understand it, I think that's a good thing. But other than that, that's all I have. Y'all hit that subscribe button, sit down those recommendations, and y'all be blessed, be the best, and be you. I'm out.